we quite like a lot of what Ron DeSantis has been doing over in Florida. We hope that some of his policies are models for other Republican governors, and hopefully, like most of the problems in America, some of the solutions might trickle their way over from the states across the pond over to us. And Ron actually made his way over to us last week in a world tour, which seems gearing up for a presidential bid. Now, gearing up for a presidential bid, you'd hope that he would be making the most of his record, showing to prospective voters why they should switch from Trump to the governor of Florida. And unfortunately, Ron has let the side down a little bit. So we'll be going over some of the good, some of the bad, and one particularly ugly thing he's done recently, just because Ron DeSantis has decided to play into the civil rights tradition rather than the constitutional tradition of American law. Now, if you'd like more information on the war for the soul of the American public, as Biden once said, disingenuously, you can pay us £5 a month to get access to all of our premium content. Stuff like this, where I decided to sit Carl down and go through refuting the claim that Jesus Christ is a socialist. And that seems to be what's going on in America at the moment, I would contend. I don't think it's, as James Lindsay has conceptualized, liberalism v communism. I think it's the Christian founding tradition of America versus the godless materialism of the Marxists. And I'm happy to dig into that at a later date, but I mean, I have heard that Christian nationalism is a psyop, but I need more time to research that, so stay tuned. Anyway, on to the first one. Ron DeSantis is pretty much obviously running, and there's sources here that have told the Post-Millennial that they expect him to... they told NBC News, and the Post-Millennial have reported it, that he is expecting to launch his bid this month. A second operative also said that meetings signal a likely presidential campaign announcement could launch sooner than expected, as Trump has soared ahead in the polling, and he's already set up an exploratory committee for that. Now, what's happening is, if we go to this next, DeSantis has already tried to pass a bill, by the way, in the governor's house that allows the governor to run for president simultaneously, because I think that's an issue in Florida at the moment. So we'll see how that pans out. So some of the good stuff is that DeSantis is considering revoking Disney's self-governing status after it opposed the parental rights in education bill. Because if you scroll down, John, there's a tweet thread in here from Disney who have decided to call it the Don't Say Gay law. No, just keep going until you see Disney's Twitter account, please. There we go. And so they put out a massive statement saying, hey, you told us that we couldn't talk to kids about sex. We took issue with that because at Walt Disney, we want to show off our genitals to children.
We're a children's company, after all.
Yeah, I suppose it's just a weird coincidence that straight after they made this statement, a bunch of their employees got caught in a paedophilia sting. Yeah, not great.
The main thing with that was it showed that Disneyland was not doing very good vetting of the staff that it was hiring.
No, and its higher-ups were also saying that I've got a pansexual child and a transgender child, and someone else said that I've been putting queerness everywhere and people haven't caught onto my not-so-secret gay agenda yet. So ESG score is just a rot that eats your company from the inside out. So DeSantis has decided, well, they've had self-governing entitlements for 55 years. I think I'll just scatter that to the winds like JFK once wanted to do the CIA. So Disney are deciding to countersue on the grounds of the First Amendment. If we go to this next piece from Timcast, and Ron DeSantis has turned around and given a pretty good, robust defense, but other Republicans like Nikki Haley, who actually invited Disney to her state instead because she's running against DeSantis and Trump, would not have given as well back as sort of the Romney era, but even some of them now. And he said, it's not conservative to simply defer to every corporation in America. That's being a corporatist. A corporatist would say you have to give Disney everything it wants. He noted that Disney was benefiting from unprecedented privileges and subsidies. They controlled their own government in Central Florida. They were exempt from laws that virtually everyone else had to follow. They had great tax breaks. They were even able to rack up debt. No single entity or individual in the state of Florida enjoyed these privileges. That's not good government. That's not free enterprise. He's right. It's mercantilism. But it's certainly even worse when a company takes all of those privileges that have been bestowed over many decades and uses that to wage war on state policies regarding families and children. So you might ask, what's DeSantis going to do with the land once he chases the Disney Corporation off of it? Well, if we go to the next one, he suggested he might put a state park there or a new state prison. So either to chase them off, he might put up a new state prison next to it. I think he should go a step further. I think once they're gone, he should turn the Disney castle into the dungeon from Aladdin. That'd be great. Stick all of the sex offenders in there and have it as a shining landmark to his plan to also, as you already covered with Carl, execute paedophiles. And then the LGBT plus community turned around and said, hey, we're most affected by that. Weird self-report, but okay. Speaking of self-reports, another law he passed recently was banning the ability for children to be subjected to public drag shows. And a giant pride parade have decided to cancel it on those grounds. Again, Strange self-report. If we can't flash to kids, why bother? Say a bunch of groomers. The Pride Alliance of the Treasure Coast posted Wednesday on Facebook that the decision to change this Saturday's Pride Fest events was made after multiple conversations with Port St. Lucie officials. The Florida House sent DeSantis a bill on Wednesday that bans children from adult performances, a proposal aimed at the governor's opposition to ban drag shows. So DeSantis, again, doing something very good, and he's on set the same thing in a bunch of different states. I can't remember the state, I think it's Missouri, that just banned all child gender transition surgeries and puberty blockers and things like that. So DeSantis is on set a domino effect. Solid. Nice, good stuff. Let's get on to the sort of tepid. I'd like to make a pun here and say the bad knock, if I may, because he came over to the UK doing his tour of Japan and South Korea and now Britain. So he's setting up his allies, the kind of people he's definitely going to talk to as the prime country should he become president. And he met James Cleverly and Kemi Badenoch over here. Now, Badenoch is obviously a sort of darling of the anti-woke right. I have my reservations, particularly of her husband being an executive in Goldman Sachs, but better than Sunak, I suppose. So in this article, an interview with The Telegraph, he has a real reverence for English philosophy, specifically English. So it's sounding pretty good here. Our founding fathers, when they launched the revolution, were not revolting against the British way of life. They were revolting because they wanted the rights of Englishmen. That's what they believed. The architecture and the infrastructure they built in America to preserve a free society really flowed out of their understanding of the best of British society and politics. You see that in everything we want to do. A little later, Mr. DeSantis went further. Because of the shared values, I feel this is my home. I feel almost like I'm in an American city, not a Democrat one apparently, because we have such a commonality of culture. If you think about it, and if you look at the world, there's only a handful of cultures that we could even plausibly say will be with us when the chips are down. For the UK, that is one of those without question. On his trip to Britain, he met James Cleverly and Kemi Badenoch. When asked how the meeting went, Kemi complimented him on what we are doing in Florida. She committed that it is what they are trying to do in Britain. She pointed out, and I think it's true, that some of the woke has been exported from the United States. It's like you're sitting here in the UK just trying to do the right thing, and then all of a sudden you have this dump. Part of what the elites do in America have heavily exported it. Elon Musk with Twitter has pointed out what they're doing in Silicon Valley with these tech companies. They're exporting ideology all over the world. Musk is changing that with Twitter, but you still have it with others. Obviously, Florida is counter to that, but it is true that you have elites in the United States that have been pushing it beyond our borders. Referring to Badenoch, he says, I commend her and her efforts to make sure that this is not corrupting British society. Mr. DeSantis, who was born in 1978, is to his supporters, and this is in the article, the new Ronald Reagan, and some of his allies appear to be hoping that Miss Badenoch could be a candidate to be the new Thatcher, potentially recreating the axis that bestrode transatlantic politics during the 1980s.
Sorry, can I just point one thing out?
Please do.
It's very funny that he says that he has all of this reverence for England and feels at home in England when he's Italian.
Yep. Yep. Well, I would like to point out that the final part probably doesn't fill you with much faith either. We're going to recreate the Reagan-Thatcher era, which was neoliberalism and seeded the grounds for the complacency of the Fukuyaman end of history towards the end of the Cold War and got us into this checked-out Gen X state where the millennials came in and took over the intersectionality. I am not filled with confidence when I hear Reagan-Thatcher. And the reason why the Reagan comparison might be all too apt is if we go over to this next one, speaking of countries he would like to closely ally himself with, while in Israel, I'm not going to make a Kanye comment here, he decided to sign a hate crime bill for Florida.
It's very strange that he chose to do. I understand that lots of American states and lots of American statesmen have ties with Israel. A lot of them
They're a strategic partner.
Support Israel. They see them as a big strategic partner in the Middle East that allows them to have a better eye on what's going on in that region of the world. But the idea of going over to a foreign country and signing in a hate speech, hate crime bill for your state in a foreign country while you are in a foreign country seems very suspicious and very strange to me. It doesn't seem like you are acting on behalf of the constituents of your state. It seems like you're acting on behalf of the wishes of that foreign nation.
Or potential future donors, or even strategic allies if you won the presidency. The problem is here, and I am going to do but what about double standards, and I think it's fair. DeSantis is a Catholic, right? If he went over to the Vatican City and signed a hate speech bill that banned you from criticising Jesus Christ, there would be 24-hour CNN chyrons about how Christian nationalism is taking over the US. Or, let's despecify it from religion, right? Let's say if he went over to China, for example, like the current sitting president, and signed something saying you cannot criticise the CCP's endorsement of lockdown policy or say that they were responsible for releasing COVID, everyone would be rightly up in arms, particularly on the right. But just because it's the Israelis, there's a problem, because everyone is afraid of stepping on the landmine of anti-Semitism, and you do not have to be anti-Semitic to critique this as an imposition on the American First Amendment. So he signed legislation cracking down on hate crimes, explicitly hate crimes, after his high-profile speech in Israel. Back in 2019, he signed a measure to combat anti-Semitism, also while in Israel. It was aimed at preventing discrimination on the basis of religion in Florida public schools. This is not in keeping with the First Amendment with the free practice of religion. It's creating a protected class which is exempt from criticism on the grounds of their religion. So let's go to the actual wording of the bill itself. If anyone wondered why he signed it, particularly in Israel, it is because it is targeted at anti-Semitism, explicitly. So this is also not encompassing other religions. I don't want it to encompass other religions. I don't want special protections for any religion. I would like us to be able to critique each other's belief systems without fear of repercussion. But instead, in the Public Nuisances Bill, the bill defines its new felony stalking and harassment penalty as a person who willfully follows, harasses, or interferes with another person's quiet enjoyment based on the person's wearing of religious-based garments or garments commonly associated with a particular religious or ethnic group or other indica of any religious or ethnic heritage commits the offence of aggravated stalking, a felony in the third degree, and it shall be considered a hate crime for purposes of the reporting requirements. No Republican should be talking about hate crimes, because hate crimes are always thought crimes, because every crime is committed from a place of hate. It does not matter if you are stabbing the man your wife slept with, or you're stabbing a black man because you hate black people. That's both hate. Instead, you're buying into the intersectional definition of somehow hating someone on the grounds of their race or religion, and race is an unchosen characteristic, whereas religion is self-associative. That's somehow worse than a crime of passion. It makes no sense. You're just policing people's thoughts. And I can't believe I have to make this point because this feels so 2015, and it's really annoying. Criminal mischief, it defines in here as any person who willfully and maliciously defaces, injures, or damages by any means any church, synagogue, mosque, or other place of worship, or any religious article contained therein, any religious cemetery or gravesite, any grave marker with a religious symbol, or any memorial, plaque, statue, or museum with any indica of religious or ethnic heritage, including any Holocaust memorial. So this is why he went over to Israel to specifically sign this. A violation of this subsection includes any physical manifestations of anti-Semitism directed towards a Jewish or non-Jewish individual or his or her property or towards Jewish community institutions or religious facilities, Jewish cemeteries or Jewish gravesites. Such expression includes the use of Nazi symbols such as a swastika. Now, I don't believe I'm going to have to repeat this, but of course, Nazis bad. Not a fan of the mid-century Germans as an English patriot. But I still don't think it's right to layer this on top of the American Constitution.
I'm sorry, but if DeSantis wanted to show that he did have all of this deep respect for the founding fathers and the political system that they established, all of this is directly going against the First Amendment.
Yeah, exactly.
Whether or not you support what the people are saying, this is absolutely a violation of First Amendment free speech rights.
Yeah, and so I'm not going to do an Il Hal No More and say it's all about the Benjamins here and get myself thrown out of Congress or whatever. But if we go over to the next piece, this actually might be to do with strategic alliances when he is president and also donors. And as we said, the Israeli lobby is quite large in both parties, frankly, but it's very large in the Republican Party. And even though John Bolton has absolutely no hope in hell, you can guarantee they're more likely to throw their weight behind him than DeSantis if they're just picking purely on who they align with politically. And there are some donors who have said they don't like DeSantis' aggression on the child gender transition stuff, which should tell you all you need to know about that. They've probably got interest in the pharmaceutical companies which are doing the drugs, frankly. All the stuff that we like because we want to protect kids. So they're saying that they're going to put themselves on hold. This is Thomas Peterfree, who's a leading Republican donor, because of his stance on abortion and book banning. Myself and a bunch of friends are holding our powder dry. So it looks like they're trying to drag him over to become more establishment, and this is a danger because DeSantis may be capable of organic fundraising, but not to the same degree as Donald Trump, and he's not independently wealthy like Donald Trump, which insulated Trump on the campaign trail from capitulating to donor demands. Now, while in office, I had my issues with Trump. Let's be frank. I mean, Jared Kushner led his foreign policy, and Jared Kushner was very much a neoconservative, right? And if we go over to the next, this is the Real Clear Politics poll aggregate, who are pretty good, and Trump is leading him 2-1. So it's not surprising that DeSantis is thinking about making strategic alliances and making sure he has enough money in his treasury coffers.
In the very first place, running for 2024 just seems like just not a good idea for DeSantis. I don't know why he would want to do this other than to just get some kind of publicity towards his name. This seems out of character for how we've seen him so far.
Well, I think many people have raised the fact that he could hit Trump from the right. And that is actually a pretty good way of doing it.
This is not hitting Trump from the right.
This is not.
No.
This is the point. This is why we're criticising. Because for our American friends, we'd quite like to parrot your policies because our entire political establishment are terrible. And so we want your policies to be good. And we also want your countries to succeed. And so I worry that DeSantis is going to become softer. Now, again, I have my issues with Trump. Particularly blaming pro-life campaigners for losing some of the seats at the midterms, Operation Warp Speed, and employing Fauci and Deborah Birch, and suggesting he wanted Bill Gates as a science advisor, inviting Caitlyn Jenner to his Mar-a-Lago campaign launch. So we're gonna encompass these trans people, but oh no, we can't trans the kids up until 8. Okay, maybe we'll negotiate, because remember, the Democrats are the real transphobes. I'm not on board with that. And of course, he kept the 19th Amendment in place. But look, Trump is still our guy to an extent, and he looks like he's going to be the guy. So what can we best hope for? And this is a page 6 bit of reporting, and it's still speculative. If we go over to this last article here, a Trump World source has told page 6 that some supporters are suggesting he make a deal with DeSantis to be his VP, and he's listening. Supporters say the VP would stop DeSantis from opposing Trump, as you suggested, and offer a useful conservative vigor to the slot, which Biden obviously doesn't have, because he's a drooling dementia-addled moron. So I would be happy with a Trump-DeSantis ticket. I think pretty much everyone would. I think the only better would be Trump-Carlson, let's be frank, right? But I worry that even if DeSantis signs on to Trump, he is still going to drag some of the neocon baggage that he would have while campaigning with him. And so I'm just gonna put this out there. Ron, please don't do this again. I know you're not watching, but if anyone in and around DeSantis, or frankly anyone in the conservative sphere that watches our content and also makes their own commentary, would like to speak out about this particular issue and just signal we don't like parallel constitutional philosophy layered over the American Constitution, this might mean that the Republican primaries are a bit more of a healthy place, and that Florida and the broader country, if the Republicans win in a very safe and fair election, get much better policy.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the Symposium series, this episode on the politics of Aristotle Part 1. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.